video on our musings regarding food, basically. I wasn't expecting to be the one doing this video, but there we are. This wasn't really an expected topic at all, but it came up recently that we were doing this, and figured we may as well make a video out of it. Anyway, obvious content warnings for the video in terms of we are going to be discussing, or I'm going to be discussing, food and food related topics. So anyone with any concerns regarding those topics may want to click away now before they become too involved. Can't say, given the relative lack of experience directly with significant issues with food in any form. We're not going to say for certain whether or not this is problematic content for people with problems with food, but it might be better to be safe rather than sorry. So please take that under advisement if you're going to continue to watch the video. Anyway, on to the musings, I suppose. Okay, so obviously the first thing is that food is in fact essential for life. This is an undeniable fact that food is in some form essential for all life, regardless of its form. And yes, there's some variance in the form of the food, as with life, but for for people inhabiting a human body, that variance is rather minimal a lot of the time. There's still significant variance, but the available foods, assuming no issues regarding affordability, are pretty much the same across the board. There are some differences, of course. We now can't speak about not being able to eat certain foods without mentioning, we can't have lactose, for example, which is, you'd have thought mostly a drink thing, but it's surprising how, well, it's not that surprising. A lot of food has cheese in it, which is one of the major sources, of course. And so lactose, or the lack of lactose, does become a restriction in that sense on what can be eaten, and even then, it's not the most significant. It does affect what can be eaten here, certainly, but it's not huge. Anyway, food, yes, this substance, or set of substances that are necessary for survival, generally somewhat enjoyable to consume, although not always, that can vary depending on, well, certainly between systems and then into non-systems as well, between singlets, but also just between headmates. But it also depends on the situation, of course, significantly, how enjoyable food is. That's all wrong. But yeah, that's the first thing is, is food enjoyable? Well, yes, no, maybe. The generalised answer is yes, but the specific answer is maybe. So, Or maybe it's the general answer that's maybe, and the specific answer that's yes. I don't know. It's supposed to be enjoyable, assumedly. Biology and evolution has generally done a good job of making things that help with survival more enjoyable. At least in theory. It's not always in practice, of course, but generally speaking, it has. And food tends to be useful for survival, so that's good. However, it is a frustration at the best of times to have to prepare food. It's not something anyone here enjoys. Some of us can do it, but even at the best of times, it's a drain of energy and the frustration that it is necessary to prepare it. However, the other option is incredibly expensive in comparison and often unhealthier, which isn't great. Admittedly, it tends to be more pleasant, which is highly unfortunate for anyone attempting to move to a healthier, more otherwise prepared diet, as it can be difficult when that is more difficult and less enjoyable often. Obviously that's not always the case. Some people are good enough chefs, cooks themselves, to make the outcome of their own cooking enjoyable on a similar wavelength to that of the one prepared elsewhere at cost, but that's often not the case. So yeah. Anyway, yes, most of the time we prepare relatively simple food. Cheap food, easy, cheap. Soups and stews a lot. The easy cheaty curry of just make stew and put some spices in it with maybe some rice by the side, or maybe a tomato sauce and some pasta. On occasion, although that tends to be very occasional. Yeah. Anyway, it's important to find the joy in food. However, it's also important not to find too much joy in food, and that's the problem here, isn't it? Is the balance between enjoying the food and making sure, therefore, that we're eating enough and not taking too much enjoyment out of it, and therefore spending too much money or eating too much. And the balance thereof is difficult and hard to manage. And we don't even really have any issues around food, We've never had, maybe some small amount of overeating and overconsuming when it comes to sugar foods, but never anything serious. And somehow, despite that, food still is something that takes, it still takes significant energy every day, and is still a consideration of energy expenditure of every day as to how much is going on food and how much money is going on food as well. So yeah, how anyone manages with more complex issues around food is impressive. Obviously people do, and so it's not impossible, but don't suppose it's much like any difficulty that we face that others don't. you know, or any difficulty for that matter that some people face and some people don't. For people that don't see it as some extraordinary hurdle to get over, but for those that face it, it's just a fact of daily life and you just get on with it. And yes, it's difficult, but you don't have another choice. You know, you get on and you do the thing. Can't say for certain, of course, but can maybe extrapolate out from shared experiences of struggle. Don't know though, and it would be maybe good to hear from people how correct or incorrect that was. In fact, maybe that it would be good to hear. You know, although of course, don't push yourselves too hard on that. Don't try and go too far. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's everything for today. Thank you for watching, I suppose.